In the immediate aftermath of independence, the survival of the United States was not guaranteed. The former colonies were loosely bound, facing the immediate challenge of constructing a functional government capable of holding them together without slipping back into tyranny. Look closely at this faded handwritten script. This is the 1776 Declaration of Independence, the document that cemented Thomas Jefferson as the primary intellectual architect of the new nation. His political philosophy, later known as Jeffersonian democracy, argued that power should remain as close to the individual citizen as possible. He envisioned a republic built on the shoulders of self-sufficient land-owning farmers, governed by strong state legislatures and a strictly constrained central apparatus. Jefferson believed that any concentration of authority in a national government would inevitably erode personal freedoms. To him, an expansive executive branch or a strong federal bank were direct threats to the liberty they had just fought a war to secure. His entire political identity was constructed around this deep suspicion. He warned Americans relentlessly to restrict the reach of federal officials and keep national power fragmented. That suspicion quickly fractured George Washington's cabinet. By the 1790s, Jefferson and Secretary of the Treasury Alexander Hamilton were actively funding rival newspapers, attacking each other's vision for the country, and splitting the young government into bitter, warring factions. These divides escalated over a decade, culminating in the election of 1800. Jefferson ran against the incumbent Federalist, John Adams, in a contest marked by harsh rhetoric, accusations of treason, and fierce ideological battles over the size of the government. He won the election, taking office as the leader of the newly formed Democratic-Republican Party. This marked the first time in modern history that executive power transferred peacefully from one opposing political faction to another, establishing a precedent that stabilized the democratic experiment. But the victory put him in a complicated position. Jefferson now stood at the head of the exact federal executive apparatus he had spent his entire career warning the public to distrust. Taking office in 1801, his strict constitutional theories were immediately tested by the realities of global politics. North African states were capturing American merchant ships in the Mediterranean and holding their crews for ransom. This piracy during the First Barbary War directly threatened the young nation's commercial shipping lines and its broader national security. In response, he deployed a naval squadron to the Mediterranean to blockade ports and bombard enemy positions. He issued these military orders without waiting for a formal declaration of war from Congress. Using the military unilaterally to protect commercial interests abroad marked a departure from his initial promises. The philosopher of limited power was acting as a pragmatic, forceful executive. 2 years later, a diplomatic opening presented an even greater test. France, led by Napoleon Bonaparte, suddenly offered to sell its massive North American holdings to the United States. This handwritten title page belongs to the 1803 treaty with the French Republic. The agreement secured over 800,000 square miles of land for approximately $15 million. The Constitution contained no provision authorizing the president to purchase foreign territory. To secure the land, Jefferson had to abandon his strict interpretation of the limits of executive authority and bypass the constraints he had long championed. This map illustrates the result of that unilateral decision, with the newly acquired Louisiana Territory highlighted in red. Comparing the central red section to the original eastern states, we can see how this single transaction effectively doubled the total landmass of the United States. This map shows the intricate branching river routes recorded during the Lewis and Clark expedition between 1804 and 1806. Jefferson commissioned this military expedition to survey the new acquisition and project federal authority across the continent. Measured, the expedition pushed miles upriver into the untamed North American wilderness, physically documenting the terrain to solidify national claims over the region. To realize his vision of a vast, continent-spanning agrarian republic, he willingly sacrificed his own core political philosophy of limited government. When Jefferson left the presidency in 1809, the young republic was geographically larger and significantly more secure against European encroachment than when he took office. The Empire of Liberty he frequently wrote about now stretched toward the Rocky Mountains, built on the back of expanded federal and executive authority. He retreated to private life, dedicating his time to scientific observation and architectural projects at his Virginia estate, Monticello. Later in life, he designed the curriculum and the campus for the University of Virginia, cementing his historical reputation as an intellectual and educational pioneer. Yet his personal life harbored a systemic contradiction. The man who authored the phrase, "all men are created equal," maintained a vast agricultural estate, reliant entirely upon the enslavement of hundreds of people, including the Hemings family. His intellectual ideals and his practical actions often pushed in opposite directions, yet they locked together to form the foundation of the country. Thomas Jefferson's legacy embodies the American paradox. He provided the nation with its intellectual arguments against centralized power, yet he utilized aggressive executive authority to physically construct the United States.